All right. So thank you all for joining us. I'm really excited about this workshop. It's one that's close to my heart and something that I strive to, build into my coaching practice and my teaching practice. So I'm really excited to share it with you. So we will dive in. All of this presentation is based off of this idea of who we are is how we lead. I truly believe that when we get to know ourselves better, we become better leaders. So this whole presentation is really built around helping you to kind of get clear on who you are and what brings you into your leadership role, and how your values play a role in that, and then how we can utilize those in order to create buy-in with our athletes, employees, students, whoever it is that we are leading. So that's where we're going to be grounded today. I'm going to introduce myself. Some of you know who I am, but my name is Amy DeBray. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am of mixed European descent, primarily Dutch. There's a mix of other things in there. I don't quite know what they all are. I am proud to have been born on the territory of the Cowichan peoples and raised on the Cowichan tribes land in the Malahat Nation, in an area now called Shawnigan Lake. And I currently live, work, and play on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Coast Salish peoples. I'm really grateful to be on this land. I've been on this land for almost 20 years now, and I am so grateful for everything that it offers. And I'm working on learning more about the culture and the traditional ways of learning and doing, and I'm so grateful for that. I do think it's important to talk about my lens and how I am approaching this topic. I am definitely not an expert. This is information that I am passionate about. It's ways of doing that I'm passionate about. It started for me in a classroom a few years ago and trying to get down to my core values. And I've seen how impactful this is in terms of working with my athletes and my students. And so it's something that I continue to learn about and I guess infuse into my day-to-day life. I will say it is a journey. So, and it is one that I don't know that it has an ending. I don't know that it should have an ending. For me, it started just over 2 years ago, sitting in a classroom, trying to get my core values down to 3. And last summer I sat and I tried to get it down to 2. And I feel comfortable with where I'm at, but those definitions are still definitely growing and being reshaped. And I think that's part of the journey as we become clear on who we are and what's important to us, then those definitions change. While the value may stay the same, but how we define it changes. And so we'll get more into that as we dive into things. I think it's important to talk about my influences. Brene Brown is a huge influence for me. You'll see a lot of work from her, Daring Greatly. I also enjoy Dare to Lead, but Dare to Lead tends to be a little more corporate. So it really depends on what your focus is. I find Daring Greatly a little bit easier to digest. It's a little more personable, where Dare to Lead is a little more, structured. There'll be a lot of work from Simon Sinek, Start With Why, and the idea of finding your why. Lots of work from Stoicism, especially coming from Ryan Holiday. The Obstacle is the Way, Stillness is Key, and his Daily Stoic. I don't think we talk about anything in leadership without talking about Carol Dweck and mindset, and the need for a growth mindset. And then there's a lot of work from James Kerr's Legacy, which is all about the New Zealand All Blacks. A really great book if you haven't read it. Super easy read, and enjoyable read. So that's kind of where my influence is. I do want to ensure that we're creating a safe space. Though there's not a lot of interaction between participants, it is important that we create a non-judgmental space. The work that we are going to do is vulnerable. So I really encourage you to kind of lean into that, find your courage, lean into the discomfort that can come. There can be some internal stuff that comes up. So I encourage you to really breathe into that and find space to allow for that. And with that said, we're going to watch a little video to kind of get us into that headspace. So bear with me as I need to do one of these. And Shaylee, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Shaylee, I'll get you to let me know if there's any issues with volume.
Location, location, location. Brought to you by the Conscious Leadership Group. Find them on the web at www.conscious.is. Animation by Graham Franks. www.grahamfranks.com. One question that conscious leaders ask themselves over and over is, where am I? To support leaders in locating themselves as they ask the question, where am I? We offer this tool, a line, a simple black line. At any moment, all leaders and all people are either above the line or below the line. Our location describes how we're being with what is occurring in our life right now. If we're above the line, we are open, curious, and committed to learning. If we are below the line, we are closed, defensive, and committed to being right. Stop right now and simply ask yourself, where am I? In this now moment, am I above the line or below the line? Typically, when people are below the line, they believe certain things about the world. For example, they believe there is not enough. It could be that there's not enough money, or time, or space, or energy, or love. People below the line also believe that their story about the situation is right. People below the line also believe that there is a threat out there. Something or someone is threatening their desire for approval, control, or security. And people below the line see the situation as serious. The deeper below the line they are, the more serious things look. People below the line tend to behave certain ways as well. They tend to cling to an opinion, find fault and blame, gossip, explain, rationalize and justify, get overwhelmed, and avoid conflict or pursue conflict for the sake of winning. When people are above the line, they believe that learning and growing are more important than being right. They believe that all people and circumstances are their allies, here for their growth. They believe that from a distance, almost everything is funny. People above the line live in curiosity, listen deeply, speak unarguably, question all their beliefs, and live a life of play. Now, knowing what you know about being above or below the line, where are you? One thing to know as you consider this question. We are hardwired to go below the line. Literally, our brain is programmed to perceive threat, and when it does, a chemical cocktail courses through our veins, and we go below the line. This reaction was designed to help us survive in the presence of a real threat to our physical survival. An issue for modern-day leaders is that often our brains can't tell the difference between a threat to our physical survival and a threat to our ego or identity. We react and get defensive when we experience a threat to our ego. So in many ways, being below the line is natural and normal. But when we are below the line, we're not in a state, literally brain state, of high creativity, collaboration, innovation, and relational connection. We're simply trying to survive. Leaders today can't thrive if they're in survival mode. So the first activity of conscious leadership is location, location, location. In this now moment, where am I? Telling ourselves and others the truth about our current location begins the great conversation.
Okay, let me come back over here. Hold on. Okay. So I do encourage you to kind of take a moment, take a breath, get yourself into that space where you're ready to learn, you're ready to explore. It is likely that you may go up and down throughout this presentation, and that's okay, but just reminding ourselves to come back into that space of being above the line so that we can do some work. So that said, I'm going to get you, hopefully you have a pen or some paper around, otherwise you can just kind of do this in your head, but we're going to dive into some stuff. So we're going to start with why. And we're going to use Simon's definition of why, and that is the why is the purpose, cause, or belief that drives every one of us. So right now I want you to take a moment and I want you to just write down or think about the question of why do you coach, or why do you teach, or why do you lead? So what is it that drives you to do what you do? So just take a moment and write that down. Okay, so we're going to move to the next question. And thinking about what you've written down, or think about why you coach, I want you to think deeper. I want you to think about what's deeper and more important than what you have written down. What's that thing that's underneath? Okay, moving to the next question. Thinking about what you have written down, I want you to think about why this matters. So what is it about this thing that matters to you? Okay, now we want to think about what happens when we actually achieve this. So we have that thing, that purpose, that cause that's deeper. We know why it matters. But now what happens when we actually achieve it? Okay, now we're gonna circle back and I want you to think about, why do you coach? Why do you teach? Why do you lead? And take a moment and write that down. Okay, so I want you to just take a moment, kind of breathe into that, allow that to kind of sink in and just be. We're going to shift gears a little bit, but I want us to integrate what we just did. So take a moment, take a few deep breaths, move your body if you need to. Okay. So I'm just going to read a small quote from Simon Sinek. When the things you say and the things you do are in alignment with what you actually believe, a thriving culture emerges. So this next little part we're going to move into is really getting clear on what it is that we believe, what's important to us, what we bring every day. And the clearer we can get on this and the more in alignment we are, the better culture we can build in our environments, be it that of a coach or an organization, a teacher, whatever it is, we can build that better culture. So we are going to do some values work. I am using Brené's definition of values. So a value is a way of being or believing that we hold most important. Living into our values means that we do more than profess our values, we practice them. We walk our talk, we are clear about what we believe and hold important, and we take care that our intentions, words, thoughts, and behaviors align with those beliefs. So we, I don't know what you guys can see, but you have a list of values that I sent you, and I'm gonna see if I can drop this into the chat for you. Let's see here. Ooh, file. Okay. What I want you to do with that list of values, if those of you that have it open, I want you to kind of read through it and start to get clear on which of those values are most important to you. So you can highlight, you can circle, you can write on another piece of paper, whatever feels right for you, but start to go through and figure out which of those values really resonate with you. Okay. And if you guys can help me timing wise, if as you are finishing up, maybe just throw in the chat that you are done. And then that way I know we are ready to kind of move to the next part. Okay, it looks like people are finishing up. If you're not done, that's totally okay. But I'm gonna just move to the next slide. So having gone through that list of values, now is the hard part. I want you to see if you can try to rank them from most important to least important. And again, as you finish up, if you can just throw a comment in the chat for me. Okay, so the next step, I had sent you an activity to do prior where I asked you to kind of make a list of your strengths in your coaching, in your teaching, in your leading. And hopefully you have that with you. What I want you to do is take that list of strengths and your list of values and make some comparison. Which values are already showing up well in your coaching? Okay, so just compare those lists, maybe make some notes on which of these are already showing up and maybe ones that you are not quite showing up. Okay. So what I want to highlight right now is hopefully what you've noticed is that some of your values are showing up in your coaching or in your leading already. These are what we would call our practiced values. They're the ones that we are really good at. We're there, we're doing them, we're consistently showing up and honoring that value. We also might have on our list some things we would call aspirational values. And aspirational values are those things that we really hold important and think are important to our leadership, but we're maybe not quite hitting in our coaching and leading. Brene calls the space between those the gap. She uses, minding the gap as the reference. And she talks about the need to really pay attention to where we are and where we want to go. And as coaches and leaders, I think we all have those areas, but the more we can become clear on where that gap is, I think the better we become in our coaching, because we can start to own that gap and we can start to communicate that gap. So we are going to watch a little video again from the Conscious Leadership group about how sometimes we say we want one thing, but our actions actually lead the other way. So just gonna switch gears and we'll go to that here.
What's your hidden iceberg? Brought to you by the Conscious Leadership Group. Find us on the web at www.conscious.is. Commitment number 1 of the 15 commitments is the commitment to take radical responsibility and end blame and criticism. Radical responsibility is a willingness to pay attention to results, not words, to the results that are actually occurring in your life, rather than what you say you want. Most people believe you can tell what you're committed to by what you say. For example, we hear leaders say they're committed to build a world-class team, have a great culture, lead their industry in innovation, be a great parent, partner, friend, or leader, get back in shape, have balance in their life. On and on the list goes, telling yourself and everyone else what it is that you want, what you say you're committed to. When we talk to these leaders, they tell us that what they say they want is not what they're actually creating. Their team is not aligned and engaged. Their culture still has toxic sludge. They haven't had the breakthrough innovation they want. They're not living up to their own expectations as a parent, partner, friend, or leader. They're 15 pounds overweight. They are overwhelmed and don't have life balance. Most leaders want to talk to us about how they can get what they say they want, what they say they're committed to. In our experience, having that conversation is not practicing radical responsibility. There is another, more important conversation. Let us explain. This is an iceberg. 1/4 of the iceberg is above the water and 3/4 is below. What's below the water is most significant. The same is true about conscious leadership. What's above the water for a conscious leader is what you say. What's below the water are your results, what is actually occurring. What's above the water is your conscious desire, and what's below the water is your unconscious commitment. Psychology has known for a long time that the unconscious is powerful, really powerful. They have debated how to discover what is in the unconscious. Conscious leaders are willing to take a shortcut to discover their unconscious commitments. They simply look at the results of their lives and own them. So if you hear yourself saying, "I want balance in my life," you're above the water, conscious desire. And what is actually occurring is that you haven't taken time off for 6 months, and you're frazzled and burning out. You're below the water, unconscious commitment. You stop believing your words and start owning your results. In practice, this is simply saying to yourself and those around you, "I'm unconsciously committed to not taking time off, being frazzled, and burning out while telling the world I want balance." This is radical responsibility, and it shifts the whole game. You stop complaining and start owning. Now that you have owned your unconscious commitment, you can examine it by asking wonder questions from genuine curiosity like, how is this pattern familiar? How do you keep this pattern going? What do you get from keeping this pattern going? we've never met anyone who isn't getting some positive payoff from their unconscious commitments. Another question is, the lifelong pattern you're noticing is, what is the action step I could take to be 100% responsible for this issue? When you and others around you take radical responsibility for your unconscious commitments, you'll create breakthrough insights and solutions that will stop your issues from continuing to recycle. So, what's your hidden iceberg?
Selling physical products is not the best way of making money on Amazon.
Sorry. So with that, I really want to key in on, key on this sense of how sometimes we say we value certain things, but they don't necessarily show up in our practice. For example, if we value clear communication, but we fail to actually communicate with everyone. Sometimes we're really good at communicating one-on-one, but we're not great at communicating to a whole group. So those are kind of that area between the practice value and the aspirational value. If we really value clear communication, we know we're good at one-on-one communication, but we need to work on our larger group communication or our broad communication so that we're actually creating clarity across the board. So it's very common that we all have these areas, and starting to gain that consciousness of which are our practice values and which are aspirational values is really beneficial in our leadership. And it helps us to really kind of communicate to those who are following us kind of where we are and where we want to go, and they can help keep us kind of in check. I often talk to my students about it, and I get them to remind me, right? Because sometimes we're not actually aware of what our outward actions actually look like. So we're going to do a bit of an activity that will help a little bit more with this. So it's important that when we take a value, that we actually make our value actionable. So we need to get really clear on what our actions look like, feel like, and sound like. I think I'm going to show you the Simon Sinek video first, and then we'll dive into the activity. I'm going to preface this video. So it is Simon answering a question. So he kind of the video comes in right in mid-sentence, but he's answering a question about values and their function. So.
Whether it was the Gettysburg Address or whether it was FDR's For Freedom speech, they're all basically pointing back to the Declaration of Independence to remind us and reignite as to why what we're about to do, go to World War II, go to Civil War, is important for us to make that sacrifice because we're upholding these values upon which our company was founded, our country was founded. So absolutely they should be written down because it makes us more accountable, right? Because somebody can say, we're not doing that. And by the way, please don't write honesty on the wall. Because if you have to write honesty on the wall, you have much bigger problems, right? And we don't write, what values should be written on the wall as verbs. They're things we do. Values are things we do. Like innovation is not a value, right? Honesty is not a value, right? And because they're not actionable. You can't walk into someone's office and say, be more innovative. I don't know what to do. Be more honest. I didn't think I was dishonest, right? But if we write on the board, always tell the truth. Look at the problem from a different angle. Give me something to do. Those are values, because values have to be actionable. They have to be doable. But we write them as these staid nouns on walls and expect people to live our values. I don't know how to live innovation. I don't know how to live value. You know? Provide value. Is that a calculation? We spent less on partially hydrogenated and high fructose corn syrup in our ingredients. Is that value? Right? But yes, when well conceived, absolutely they should be written down. I'm a great believer. Look at any great monotheistic and polytheistic religion. There's usually a book. And that book is used for reference. So I'm a great believer in writing things down. I think companies should have manifestos that explain the vision they have for the future world in which we will exist, which they will commit themselves to help advance, that has nothing to do with their products or their services. Barry Waymiller, that makes manufacturing equipment, says that we exist to build great people to do extraordinary things. We define success by how we touch the lives of humans, of each other. It's a manufacturing company. Because it's not about what they make. It's about using their company to build people to do extraordinary things and to value the success and measure the success by how well they do that. No company, you don't have a manifesto if you're the only ones who care about it. And if it's based on your product or your service, you're the only ones who care about it, right? We're here to do the things you don't want to do so that you can do the things you want to do. That's not, nobody cares. To provide the best possible service and the lowest possible price, no one cares. Like, nobody reads that and goes, I want to work there, you know? But if you say, we exist to provide good, clean family fun, to provide people an escape from reality, I want to work at Disney. If you say, I'm here to challenge the status quo and give individuals the power to stand up to Big Brother, if you're that mindset, I want to work for Apple. If you say we're here to help people be more productive in their world, I want to work for Microsoft. These are causes that have nothing to do with their companies. They've just used their companies to help advance those causes. Yes, write it down. Yes, write it down. And then make sure that your people hold you accountable to the things you wrote down. Yes, 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 yes.
Okay. So, So where are we at? Making things actionable. So you have a worksheet. It's called the Values Exploration Worksheet. And what it is really just a call for you to start to get clear on what your values actually look like, sound like, and feel like. And when we do this, we're better able to get our athletes, our students, our employees to really buy into that vision that we're working towards. So I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to really pick one of your values and start to get clear on it. So for example, what does communication look like? What does clear communication feel like? What does it sound like? So take a moment. And then again, as you're done, just throw a comment in the chat and then I'll know we're ready to move on. Okay. Staying conscious of time, I am going to kind of start to move on. In a normal setting, when we can do things together in the same room, I find this activity is a really good one to have people pair up on, because it really brings into focus how we can feel very different about different values. Even to do this, if you're on a coaching staff or a teaching staff or a leadership group, to do this as a group, to do it individually, and then come together and have the discussion and really get clear. And you start to learn a lot about each person and how they approach things. I've done this with teams, to have athletes actually take values that they hold important in a team environment and have them really define that, and then have that discussion of what it looks like, feels like, and sounds like. And this can really start to create this space of common understanding, and that buy-in, because now I understand you. I understand what drives your behavior. I understand why you get upset if I'm late, or I understand what communication looks like and feels like for you. So now I know how to communicate with you as an athlete, as a teammate, as a friend. So this is a great activity to do with your athletes, to do with coworkers, friends, even. Get really clear on your values, and it can help you get clearer on what's important for you. So next steps, your kind of next steps coming out of this, I would encourage you, if you haven't written your coaching philosophy, or even if you do have a coaching philosophy, or a leadership philosophy, or a teaching philosophy, go back, look at it, are your values interwoven into that philosophy? And if not, can they be? Can you find ways to communicate your values in that philosophy? I also encourage you to go a little bit deeper, a little broader than your coaching philosophy, and potentially write a manifesto. Manifesto always comes with a bit of a weird connotation to it, given its historical past, but it doesn't need to be a negative. But it's almost more, it's your philosophy, but it's also what you're committed to in your practice. So Brene has some fantastic examples on her website. Mike Matheny wrote an entire book on his manifesto. He's a baseball coach. It is fantastic. And it's all about really grassroots coaching and bringing in this philosophy of a holistic approach, or a conscious coaching approach into coaching. Fantastic. You can also really find a lot of like teaching manifestos online, and they're a way to just really communicate who you are and what you're trying to achieve. And I'm going to be honest, it is hard to write. I've started mine and it is nowhere near done. It's one of those ones where I keep coming back and going, I don't quite know if I'm hitting that messaging, but it is something I encourage you to try at least. I also encourage you to work on your operationalized definitions. So someone in other talks has asked me what operationalized means. So operationalized means the way that you define something. So for example, I sent you guys a list of operationalized definitions, and that just refers to the definition that I am using. And we all have our own definition of values. So when you do that activity of what your value looks like, feels like, sounds like, you can start to get clear on what your operationalized definition of your value is. And then lastly, the goal, and I hope for all of you, is to create more leaders. I know I lead with the goal of helping my athletes, my students, those around me to find that greatness within themselves so that they can be leaders in their own area. So I encourage you to do the same. And I will leave with Brene's definition of a leader. And a leader is anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes and has the courage to develop that potential. Leadership is not about titles or the corner office. It's about the willingness to step up, put yourself out there, and lean into courage. The world is desperate for braver leaders. It's time for us all to step up. I want to thank you all for joining us, joining me. In a moment, I will turn off the camera and we can have or turn off the recording, and we can have a little intimate conversation. But I also, if you have to go, that is totally okay. I also highly encourage you to sign up for Lauren's workshop later this week, as she's going to be kind of following up on all of this stuff. So thank you all, and I will